Hi, welcome back to La Belle Vie. Today I'm revisiting the Dan Markel case, which is the 2014 murder of FSU law professor Dan Markel. Specifically, I want to explore what may be included in the proffers that convicted defendant Katherine Magbanua, or Katie, has provided to the state in connection with the Charles Adelson trial, which is scheduled to occur this fall. So she has provided proffers to the state. But and generally speaking, once a proffer has been shared in discovery with the defense, it becomes a public record, and therefore it would be something that we, the public, would be entitled to see. That has not happened in this case, and the defense has filed a motion to seal the proffers. The state did not oppose that motion, and the court did grant it. This can be done. Proffers can be kept sealed if, upon showing that there is a serious threat of the defendant's right to a fair trial. And in this case, the judge did find that there was that serious threat. So we don't know what's in these proffers. Now, there may not be a lot in there, right? We don't know. But the fact that they remain sealed is interesting to me. Now, Charlie Adelson's lawyer said, look, we saw the proffers. We don't think there's anything incriminating in there against our client. He could be totally right, right? There may not be much left for her to say. And she certainly was given opportunities to provide testimony to the state, but did not do that and chose to have her day trial in court. So there is some thinking that there might not be a lot there. There's also some thinking that there might be a lot there. And of course, Charlie Adelson's lawyer is not going to come out and say, oh gosh, this is horrible for us, right? So let's all kind of keep some perspective. So what I thought of doing is I reviewed Katie's trial testimony from the two trials. And I also wanted to look back to the probable cause affidavit that was issued in connection with Katie's arrest, which is much longer and more detailed than the original probable cause affidavit that I previously went through when Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera were first arrested. So I wanted to go through those information. Now, with respect to the probable cause affidavit, just remember that that's just all it is. It's basically an affidavit that's submitted at the time of the arrest warrant, based on the affidavit of what the police, the detectives, and the investigators think is evidence at the time. It does not mean that information in the probable cause affidavit is actually evidence. So we all have to keep that in mind. But I do think they're very useful because, one, they tell us what the state thinks the theory is, tells us what the state has and what could be potentially admitted into evidence if appropriate. But I think it also gives us clues of where the investigation may be going. So for that reason, I thought it would be good for us to go through that. So let's get started. I've identified 6 areas where I think there might be information that we could learn from Katie's proffer. So let's go on to the first one. So the first one of what could Katie's proffer tell us? So I was thinking that her proffer could give us details of what was happening in the weeks and months prior to Dan's murder on July 18th, 2014. Could she tell us more about that failed June 2014 trip that Sigfredo and Lewis took to Tallahassee? I mean, could she tell us who knew about this trip? I mean, presumably they went up to Tallahassee for some reason. I don't know that basically around the time May, June, I think would be helpful. I don't know that if there was more planning going on, obviously, then we could, she may know about that. But I would suspect that it's probably going to be more that May, June. What can she tell us about the 2 weeks time period that Wendy was in South Florida right before the murder? Maybe did she see Wendy during that time? Did she know that Wendy was there through Charlie? Because remember, they were still an item at this time. So I just always thought it was interesting that Wendy was in South Florida right up to those 2 weeks, right before the murder. So just interesting on what, if anything, was going on. Um, what was going on with the background of the Father's Day picture, and I'll insert that here. When it was on Father's Day, and it was when there's a picture of here Katie and Wendy and Katie's friend. And this was taken at the Icon, the luxury high rise condo where Wendy's parents, Harvey and Donna Adelson, were renting an apartment. So, what was going on there? Was that just a innocent, meeting, or can she tell us more about that? Um, I thought that she could definitely tell us more about those strange calls to Harvey Adelson's phone on July 1st. So here, this is again from Katie's probable cause affidavit. Um, Here we've got this July 1st incident. So specifically on July 1st, 2014, we've got cell tower records show a flurry of communication between the alleged conspirators. On that date, Charlie and Magbanua's cell phones were in the vicinity of Charlie's residence between 10:04 and 1:20, possibly indicating that they were together. Now, at approximately 11:47 a.m., Magbanua's telephone began attempting to contact Sigfredo Garcia's telephone. And over the next 5.5 hours, Magbanua attempted to contact Garcia approximately 48 times. At 5:05 p.m., Katie made contact with Sigfredo, and they appeared to have a conversation lasting 6 minutes and 22 seconds. Approximately 9 minutes later, at 5:20, Sigfredo's cell phone attempted to contact Harvey's cell phone. The cellular records indicate this call went to voicemail. There is no known reason for Sigfredo to call Harvey Adelson. I agree. Over the next 2 hours, there are several more contacts between the suspected conspirators. Magbanua's telephone attempted to contact or did contact Garcia's telephone over 30 times. Oh my gosh. Then Katie's telephone called Harvey's telephone at 7:43, which also appeared to go to voicemail. At 7:44, Katie called Sigfredo with a call duration of 4 minutes. So Katie may not be able to tell us why Sigfredo's phone call, why Sigfredo called Harvey, but she can certainly potentially give us more information on why she called Harvey. And it's, more than what she's told us, that she was trying to apologize because she was embarrassed. At 8:29, Katie and Charlie's telephones had a contact for approximately 3 minutes. And then immediately after this call, at 8:33, Katie again contacts Sigfredo. And then at 9:07, Katie and Charlie's telephones had contacts over 36 minutes. And at 9:44, they had contact again for over 13 minutes. At 9:58, Charlie's telephone attempted to contact Harvey, which appeared to go to voicemail. Throughout the remainder of the evening and night, there were numerous other contacts between Katie's telephone and Sigfredo's telephone, as well as Katie's telephone and Charlie's telephone, with all the calls ending just after midnight. At 12:43 on July 2nd, Charlie's telephone contacted Harvey's telephone with a duration of 11 minutes and 42 seconds. So he did actually get in touch with Harvey's telephone. Now, we don't know that that's Harvey. It could be, there's some speculation that he could have been talking to Donna, but it was a telephone that was in Harvey's name. The two separate attempted calls on July 1, 2014 from Katie and Sigfredo to Harvey's telephone, 2 hours and 23 minutes apart, were the only contacts found between those phones and records dating back to May 1st, 2014. So basically, they looked back a few months, and those are the only times they had ever contacted, that either Katie or Sigfredo had ever contacted Harvey's phone. So very interesting. Perhaps Katie can give us some more insights on that, what was going on there. Second thing that I was thinking that Katie's proffer might tell us was what was going on in the planning wise in the days leading up to the murder. Conversations that were happening that Katie knows about the exact date or time that this murder was going to take place. What about conversations about Dan's schedule? Could she tell us that, she was in contact with someone about Dan's schedule? Because remember, she's the middle person. She's the person that has to connect Sigfredo and Luis Rivera, the ones that actually drove to Tallahassee and murdered Professor Markel, and the Adelsons. So, was she having conversations with Charlie or anybody else about Dan's schedule? Who were they with? Was there anything to the rental of a Prius, particularly a light colored Prius? I mean, maybe that's just a weird coincidence, but you'll remember there was a lot of interesting coincidences about Jeffrey Lacasse's light colored small compact car and a light colored car that they rented. And they rented a light colored car in June when they came to Tallahassee as well. So was that on purpose or was that just a coincidence? So that's hopefully some things that could get information, and I think would be really worthwhile to at least corroborate the testimony, and can make those connections, but potentially even add some other connections with maybe some other individuals that haven't been charged. The next thing I was thinking about is what about all the calls we had the evening before the murder and on the morning of the murder, and then later on the day of the murder? What was said? We just have information about what they were going on. But, now that she's been proven guilty and she's submitting a proffer, is she going to finally give us more information on what those calls and texts were about? What about, do we have any evidence of WhatsApp messages? I mean, WhatsApp is like such a huge thing because we know from testimony from a number of witnesses that the Adelsons used WhatsApp a lot. What about the phone call at 12:30 after the murder when Sigfredo turned his phone back on? They had gotten away from Tallahassee. I believe they were around Lake City, and he turned on his phone, and that's when he called Katie. And that's when Luis Rivera testified that she said when Sigfredo said it was done, and she said, "I know." She can tell us, did she really say that? And what was going on with that? How did she know and how did she know? So here's actually where I want to go to the probable cause affidavit because it really gives us a good um, overview of all of these calls that were going on. So here we go. Here's the analysis of cell phone records, basically leading up to the murder and involving Katie, Charlie, and then, of course, as I said, Charlie and Donna. And that coincided with Katie having contact with Sigfredo. So here, this is, I thought, was really helpful to see this timeline. So we've got 12 a.m. to 12:23 a.m. So basically the morning of the murder. Rivera's and Garcia's headsets communicated with cell sites in the area of where they were staying. At 12:01, Katie contacts Sigfredo. And then at 12:07, Charlie contacts Katie for 7 minutes. Then 12:26 a.m., GPS shows the Prius at North Monroe. It looks like they went somewhere. And then I think that's right. I think that Lewis said that they went out to get some illicit things, I think. 12:34, Katie contacts Charlie Adelson. 1:02, Charlie contacts Donna. 1:03, Charlie contacts Katie. 2:21, 3:10, 6:45, and 8:03. Luis Rivera's headset communicated with cell sites in the area of the roadway inn. Then 8:09, Donna contacts Wendy. And then 8:50, Dan Markel. This is where we know he drops off his children. And then he contacts Wendy at 9:02 on his way to the gym. Of course, we know that went to voicemail. 9:12, this is when we know he arrived at Premiere. And we know that Sigfredo and Luis Rivera were following him in the parking lot. But then at 9:12, Charlie contacts Wendy. And then, of course, Dan goes into the gym. Then at 9:19, Wendy contacts Charlie back and they talk for 18 minutes. Then, of course, this is where we see Garcia and Rivera's handset are all at Premier Fitness. Charlie at 9:38 a.m. contacts Donna. At 9:58 a.m., Charlie contacts Katie. And then 10:07, Katie contacts Charlie. 10:08, Katie contacts Charlie again. 10:09, Charlie contacts Katie, 10:38. Remember the murder, well, here we go. The 10:38 video shows Dan leaving Premiere. Um, I mean, what was this stuff about, you know? I mean, she's gonna be able to tell us what this stuff is about. She's not gonna be able to tell us what these are about necessarily, what Charlie and Donna talked about, but she can tell us what she talked about with Charlie. Of course, then we have the timeline of the murder. Bus video shows this is where we know that the Prius was following Dan to back home. This is when he was making his phone call to the teacher about his child's new school potentially, and then of course this is when his neighbor hears the gunshot. And then 10:55 a.m. This was interesting. So it looks like here that the murder happened probably around between 10:22 and 10:55 because 10:55 we've got bus video showing the Prius already northbound. So, and 11 a.m. that's when the teacher was trying to contact Dan Markel, and then that's also at the same time when Markel's neighbor came back next door and realized what had happened and called 911. And that's when the 911 call happened. And I've always kind of thought of it as 11ish, but it looks like it's probably around 10:52 was when the murder actually took place. But in any event, then we've got 11:06. Donna contacts Charlie. 11:22. Charlie contacts Donna. 11:30. Charlie contacts Katie. 11:31. Charlie contacts Katie. So there's a lot there that I think that the Katie's proffer hopefully gave us information about what was actually being said in all of those conversations. So I think that would be really helpful. Another thing that was interesting that actually happened a little earlier, and I'm going to go back to this was in an earlier part of the probable cause affidavit. Um, so let me go back to here. This is something I didn't know about. So we know that we know that at the time of the day of the murder, the police detective Ison went and picked Wendy up from where she was having lunch with her friends, and then she had that 5+ hour interview with the police. And towards the end of that interview, she winds up calling her parents to tell them what had happened. And so basically here we've got, she wanted to call her parents. And so she talks to her mom at 7:03. After notifying her mother of the shooting, Wendy asked her mom to contact Charlie of the shooting so she wouldn't have to do that. This is what was interesting. Call detail records indicate after Wendy's conversation with her mother, Donna called Charlie at 7:11 p.m., which went to voicemail. And that's fine. That's what Wendy asked her to do. It probably would have been something she would do anyway, right? Then Charlie calls Donna's cell phone at 7:13 p.m. with a call duration of 5 minutes, 47 seconds. Then Charlie calls Donna back at 7:29 p.m. and another call for 6 minutes and 31 seconds. Then at 7:36 p.m., so right after he gets off the phone with his mom the second time, Charlie calls Katie's cell phone with a phone call of 2 minutes and 49 seconds. This call is significant because, as we previously stated, investigators believe Katie was the person that facilitated the homicide and that she is the link between the subject family members and the shooters. So, very interesting. And again, Katie can tell us, well, what was being said during this 7:36 p.m. call. Thing that I thought that Katie's proffer could potentially tell us more about is details on all of the financials. So we know that there was we know, and she admitted that she was on the quote payroll of the Adelson Institute, but that she said that she really didn't work for the dental practice and that she was really just kind of being a helper to Charlie. And she said that she did that in order to get basically federal health insurance for her child. So, um, but I think we could get more information on that and like, was that true? I'd love to know. I mean, I think everyone kind of suspects, and again, it's just suspicion, opinion, but it's like, why would you be getting paid an amount for 2 years, then it stops right when you're arrested, or actually, it stopped right when Sigfredo was arrested. What's the reason for that, right? So perhaps she can give us details on that. Um, Perhaps we'll learn finally more about this large spike in financial deposits after the murder. And again, as I mentioned here, the probable cause affidavit goes through a lot of detail on the financials. So hopefully we can find out more about this. Here's like I said, the paychecks she was getting from the dental practice. She also was making some pretty significant cash deposits here. And in total, they figured out that since the homicide through November of 2015, so a little over a year after the murder, the amount of cash that she had been depositing was over 56 grand, which was significantly more than she had ever been depositing before. Um, and they're also showing, they've got some information about their lifestyle, like where they were living and kind of where she was working and all of this. And I think this just does a nice job of basically saying, look, this was a person that wasn't, was had a baby daddy that she was with on and off that didn't seem to have secure employment. She's got 2 young children, and she's kind of working these jobs and she's not making a ton of money. So I thought that was super interesting. So hopefully we'll find out more from Katie about what all those finances were. The last thing I think we're going to hopefully find out more about is the bump. So the bump is, again, the April 2016 undercover operation where the FBI basically approached John Adelson when she was walking to pick up the children, Wendy's kids, from school. And they presented her with a piece of paper with an article about Dan Markel's murder and basically a phone number and the word $5,000 written on it. So that's the bump. I have a whole video on it. I'll link it here if you want to go check it out. But in any event, Katie, I think, can definitely give us more detail on the conversations. If you recall, during Katie's second trial, the state had been able to enhance the recording so you could hear more what was being said. The interesting thing, though, is you could hear more about what was being said by Charlie, right? You couldn't hear Katie as much. So hopefully Katie will be able to tell us more about what she was saying. You recall at trial she was kind of given this impression that, oh, he was just talking stories. I had no idea he was contacting me, and I just knew I was interested because he said ex-girlfriend, and I wanted to figure out why I was being included. Well, obviously that story is not going to work in the Proffers situation. So hopefully we'll get more information on what that whole bump was about, information about their coded language they use. Um, can she tell us why Charlie called her? Um, why he wanted her to call that number? What happened in the car before they went into the Dolce Vita restaurant? So apparently, there when Charlie drove up after meeting with his mother, Charlie drove up to meet with Katie to talk about this bump. And according to testimony, they were sitting in Charlie's he went to go to where Katie was working part-time in a real estate office. So she, I guess, went in his car. They talked for a few minutes, up to 10 minutes, and then went into the Dolce Vita restaurant. The FBI doesn't have any recording on what was being said in that car. So, and Katie said at trial she didn't really remember that. So hopefully we'll get information on what was said in that car because that's not on a wire. Um, I think also this was interesting. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here again. I wasn't aware of this April 25th meeting they had. So let me go ahead. So this meeting I wasn't aware of. So basically on Monday, April 25th, um, the undercover agent had mailed a letter to Harvey and Donna that basically was trying to kind of like prompt them to get some response. Because if you remember at this time, no one had contacted that number. And so calls intercepted indicate Donna has shared the information with Charlie, who in turn has forwarded it to Magbanua. So that's interesting. Magbanua has again asked Sigfredo to either determine who the phone number belongs to or call the number. Katie reported to Charlie the phone is either out of service or not a good number. It appears Sigfredo lied to Katie about making the callers not called the correct number because the agent's phone had not been called and was working properly. So this is interesting here. Later the same day, Charlie called Katie and asked if she was on her way. It appears Charlie and Katie have been communicating through a different source to schedule a meeting. Because so remember, they were being tapped at this time. So how were they communicating to schedule this meeting? I mean, maybe that was a WhatsApp. Maybe there was a burner phones. Charlie directs her to Harvey and Donna's building to meet with them. Charlie told Katie that he was talking to his parents about everything. Charlie continues to try and convince her to meet at Donnie and Harvey's building, but eventually gives in and agrees to meet with her at another location. Katie called Charlie back, who advised they are meeting at a marina near Monty's. So this is interesting. I don't know that I knew about this meeting. I knew that there was a meeting that happened later where Charlie met with Donna and Harvey out by a pool, but I didn't know about this meeting with Katie. So she could definitely tell us about information on this with this follow-up letter that was designed to kind of prompt things along. She can tell us more about that potentially. Can she tell us more about this meeting? Did it happen? What did they talk about? Did Charlie really tell her that he, shared everything with his parents? So again, this will be interesting to see if this was part of her proffer. I don't know. So, in sum, I think that I do think, this is again my personal opinion. I do think that Katie's proffers, and it's supposedly two, I do think that her proffers probably have some good information in there. I mean, just from what we went through alone, I think that she can fill in some holes. I do think she can make the case against Charlie even stronger, even though I think a lot of people think that the case against Charlie is fairly strong as it stands. You never know what can happen in a jury. You don't know if there's going to be all of the evidence is going to get in, right? I mean, we've seen that through all the trials, so it may look great from now, but you never know, right? And you don't know what the defense is going to bring up. So I don't think you can ever be in a position as a prosecutor to like kind of rest on your laurels. So I think if Katie provided information that really tightened up that connection, I think it would be worthwhile. Because remember, on the flip side, if they do use Katie's proffer and she does testify, the defense is going to gobble her up, right? I mean, because she lied twice on stand. They're going to say she's got all the motive in the world to lie here. Why is she telling the truth now when the time before she had, what I'm saying? Like, she's only lying now to get herself out of trouble, a mess, because she's now serving a life sentence. And so she has a major incentive to lie. Whereas, whereas before she, potentially was telling the truth because she was on the stand. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot that the defense can use to, and of course, whatever she substantively says, of course, they're going to always have their say of how to contradict whatever she says ultimately. But putting all of that aside, I think that, and the prosecution's going to have to weigh this, right? Because they know that that's what's going to come from the defense. But that being said, I still think after looking over all of this information, things that we haven't really seen yet, and again, maybe it's just because it isn't there, it's not going to come in evidence, but I think there's enough there that at the very least, she can really tighten that connection between Charlie allegedly and her and the killers. So I think that alone is probably enough for the state to be able to use her. And who knows? I pointed out some other information that Katie, again, this is just presupposition. We're all just, we don't know. These are just opinions, but there is things that potentially Katie knows. And there's enough there, I think, that maybe there could be something, but we'll have to wait and see. Um, okay, so in conclusion, I think, I mean, it's going to be it remains to be seen whether the state's going to actually use the proffers, right? And apparently there are two. I think, in my opinion, that if what's in those proffers is information that can even more tighten what the state has as far as their evidence against Charlie Adelson, I think that they're probably going to take the chance to use it, in my opinion. Now, that being said, that means that the defense is going to go after her. I mean, impeach her credibility all over the place because they're going to say, look, she lied twice before. Now we're expecting her to, now all of a sudden, when she's been convicted of murder and she's serving a life sentence, she's now all of a sudden telling the truth. And now, because it's in her best interest to do so in this situation. So I think that there's a lot that the defense can use to really attack her credibility. But so, I mean, the state's going to have to make that strategic decision of whether they're ultimately going to want to use her testimony. So we'll have to wait and see. But that being said, if their evidence is in there that kind of connects some of these things that we just went through, and again, this is all just my thoughts, my opinions. Um, Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, including Charlie Adelson and anybody that has not been charged. Um, but I think if there's enough there to really tighten those connections, I think that it's probably worth for them to, I mean, I think they're going to probably strongly consider it. And if there's anything else that they might find out now, and I pointed out a few in what we went through just now, and maybe some other things that we could find out that Katie might know since she was the middle woman, right? Um, does she have other information that could potentially be used in trials with other potential defendants? So we'll have to see. But anyway, thank you again for joining. I find this case super fascinating. I have a couple of videos planned, including one that's very similar to my Sarah Boone um, in-person vlog type video that I did that some of you all have seen and had fun with. So I'm planning one for that. And again, thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye.